I still can't like sink in what really happened. Like I'm still trying to process it all and all the rest. So and also I never expect that to happen, but then again it can happen to anybody. So I'm hoping for the best outcome for today. Hopefully I don't have to go come here again. Honestly, I'm really shocked by all the support.
And today we are diving deep into a case unfolding right now in the Wynberg Magistrates Court. It's one that has absolutely gripped the community there, and well beyond. It centers on the accused baby thief, Shameemah Jacobs. And look, this isn't just any baby-snatching case, not at all. This is a story soaked in manipulation, deception, deep trauma. The courtroom itself, packed. You can feel the tension, a community demanding justice. It really makes you wonder, how deep does this actually go? Okay, so let's unpack Shameemah Jacobs first. Who is she? And what did that initial court appearance really tell us? She's 37 from Cape Town, made her first official appearance today. Head bowed, civilian clothes, already painted as a villain by the public, you know. But then this detail emerged, and it really sets this case apart. She was caught breastfeeding the baby, 8-day-old baby Imaad, when the police found her. I mean, that act alone, it just raises so many questions. The delusion, maybe? Right. Okay, so today in the Wynberg Magistrates Court, as she was formally charged, kidnapping. That's under Section 288 of the Criminal Procedure Act. And the state, well, they came out swinging. Prosecutor Melanie Smith, she made it clear they intend to oppose bail, cited the, quote, severity of the crime and the risk of interference with the investigation. And she said quite directly, this isn't just a kidnapping. It's a cold, calculated deception that endangered the life of an infant and inflicted deep psychological harm on a new mother, end quote. Now, for our audience who are generally familiar with legal stuff, what does that aggressive stance right at the start tell us beyond just the obvious seriousness? Is this typical, or does it maybe signal something about the evidence they think they already have?
Oh, it's quite telling. That strong language, opposing bail immediately. It signals the state likely believes they have a very strong case, possibly compelling evidence that goes beyond just finding the child with her. And Section 288 of the Criminal Procedure Act is specifically for child kidnapping in South Africa. It often carries mandatory minimum sentences. It's serious. So charging under that specific section isn't just procedural. It sets a really high bar for the defense right from the get-go. It signals the state's intent. They're likely pushing for a significant custodial sentence here.
Okay. But the defense naturally tried to paint a very different picture. Her legal aid attorney brought up her clean record, suggested mental health struggles, and specifically mentioned a, quote, delusional postpartum episode, hinting clearly at a plea of diminished capacity.
And that raises a really important legal question, doesn't it? This idea of a delusional postpartum episode, a defense of diminished capacity. Essentially, it argues that mental illness significantly impacted her ability to understand right from wrong or to control her actions, which is worlds away from the state's picture of a cold, calculated deception. That implies full intent, full awareness. So the court's going to have to weigh these two completely opposing narratives. That psychiatric evaluation they mentioned, it's going to be absolutely crucial. Legally, these two arguments are fundamentally at odds.
And for now, it seems the court wasn't immediately convinced by the defense's initial pitch. The magistrate ruled she stays in custody until July 25th for the next appearance, pending that psych eval and more investigation. So how did we even get to this point? Let's rewind a bit. Baby Imaad was reported missing morning of July 14th. His mother, exhausted recovering from birth, and reportedly, this is key drugged, in her own home. Police used CCTV witness statements, tracked Jacobs down in less than 48 hours, found her at a nearby address. But here's the really chilling part, the pre-kidnapping deception. Jacobs had allegedly been posing as a nurse, or maybe a social worker, in the days before the kidnapping, earning the mother's trust, offering help, visiting frequently. And then she struck. I mean, the violation of trust there, it's profound, isn't it? To weaponize compassion like that. What are the long-term emotional scars from that kind of targeted deception? Not just for the mother, but, for baby Imaad too, even though he was found relatively quickly.
Oh, the scars run incredibly deep. For the mother, absolutely. The trauma of being violated like that, drugged in her own home, her newborn taken, it impacts everything. Her ability to bond, her sense of safety, it's massive. And even though baby Imaad was recovered quickly and seems healthy, experts talk about something called bonding disruption. When infants are separated from their mothers at such a critical early age, well, babies are resilient, yes, but that early trauma, it can subtly influence development down the line. Things like emotional regulation, attachment styles. It might not show up for years, but the potential impact is there. It just highlights how devastating this kind of crime is, even when the child is returned physically unharmed.
And that devastation was visible outside the court today. The scene was intense. Residents shouting, some crying, praying even, holding signs, justice for Imaad, lock her up for life. Really raw emotion. But underneath that raw anger, there seemed to be deeper suspicions brewing in the community. We heard from Auntie Shireen from Mitchell's Plain, a community member. She put it pretty bluntly. She said, this doesn't feel like a one-woman act. There's more behind this. Sean, you don't just wake up and steal a baby unless you've got someone waiting on the other side. Mm-hmm. Now, that syndicate theory, it's compelling, especially given those community feels about baby selling rings. But how does that square with the defense hinting at a delusional postpartum episode? Can those two ideas, organized crime versus an individual psychological break-even, coexist legally, or do they just clash?
That's a really critical question. Look, the community's suspicion about a syndicate, it's not coming out of nowhere, right? These kinds of criminal rings are a known, terrible reality in many places. Their fears reflect a genuine public awareness. Legally speaking, yes, these narratives could potentially coexist, but they dramatically change the case. If the state were to find evidence of, say, a syndicate, Jacobs could face way more serious charges. Human trafficking, conspiracy, things like that. It escalates everything. And if there's clear evidence of planning, of organized involvement, then that diminished capacity defense. It gets much harder to argue convincingly. It shifts the whole narrative away from a solitary, maybe diluted act towards a coordinated criminal operation. So yeah, these whispers aren't just noise. There are potential lines of investigation that completely reshape the trial.
And that syndicate theory, it's being fueled by some pretty alarming details coming out from the community level. Things like Jacobs allegedly changing her story multiple times. Whispers about another woman involved, someone named Siobhan. There's even talk of videos suggesting this was a planned operation with others. And the community keeps asking these questions, right? Why was Jacobs never seen visibly pregnant? How did she just show up at home with a newborn, no questions asked? Where's any hospital record? And then there's that bombshell claim. Police haven't confirmed it, but the talk is the biological mother was actually poisoned. A deliberate act to weaken her, if that's true. Wow. That points to an incredibly calculated plot.
Yeah, and this whole thing is just blown up online, as you'd expect. You've got, TikTok sleuths, Facebook watchdogs, dissecting every little detail, every bit of footage. Okay, on one hand, that rapid spread, it definitely raised awareness incredibly fast. That can be good, obviously. But the other side, waves of misinformation, people's names getting thrown around recklessly, folks trying to take justice into their own hands based on rumors.
It creates huge problems for the actual investigation, trying to sift credible leads from all that digital noise while still ensuring a fair process. The main takeaway, though, seems clear. The public is watching very, very closely. And they aren't buying simple explanations, but that intense scrutiny, it has its own dangers.
Absolutely. And that public pressure directly impacts the legal road ahead for Jacobs. Tabiso Maletzine, a legal analyst, pointed this out. If she's convicted fully under Section 288, yeah, we could be looking at 15 years, maybe even more, especially with mandatory minimums often applying to child kidnapping. However, if her defense team successfully argues that mental instability angle, the outcome could be completely different. Compulsory psychiatric treatment instead of prison. But here's something crucial. With all this public outcry, this demand for justice, there's a real chance this case gets pushed up to the regional court and regional courts. They can hand down much heavier sentences, so the stakes could get significantly higher for everyone involved.
So where things stand right now. Baby Imaad is home, physically relatively okay. His mother, understandably deeply traumatized. She's getting counseling, and she's expressed immense gratitude for all the support. But the nightmare, it's obviously not over, not by a long shot. And this whole ordeal, it forces us to ask some really tough, critical questions. As a society, how easy is it to steal a baby in South Africa? How many others like Shameemah might be out there, walking among us, maybe even planning something? And what is the government, what are the systems actually doing to protect new mothers and newborns? It really makes you wonder just how deep does this problem go beyond this one awful case?
You're right. If we just treat this as some kind of bizarre one-off incident, we completely fail. It's a massive failure. This isn't just about one child or one alleged kidnapper. It's about systemic vulnerabilities, a system that allowed a new mother to be drugged, helpless, in her own home. It's about a system that somehow allowed a woman to allegedly pose as a professional, gain trust, and then, perhaps most chillingly, pretend for 8 whole days that someone else's baby was hers without anyone catching on immediately.
The implications go way beyond this courtroom. It forces us to look hard at security protocols, public awareness, community vigilance, the whole fabric, really.
Shameemah Jacobs might be in court, but in a way, we're all on trial for how something like this could happen, seemingly in plain sight. Justice doesn't whisper, it roars. Something to keep thinking about as you follow the developments in this deeply disturbing, unfolding story.